Okay, so I have to start. Because this one is not waiting. This energy came in before I even sat down. Before I even thought about what this reading was going to be. And I don't usually say that because it sounds like a thing people say. You know, it sounds like a line people use to pull you in. But I'm saying it because it literally happened, and I need you to understand that what I'm about to tell you is not something I organized or planned or sat down and constructed. It arrived organized, already knowing where it was going, already knowing exactly who it was for. And if you are that person, and I think you are, I really do, you already felt something when you clicked this. Not just curiosity, something closer to recognition. Like some part of you exhaled just a little when you saw the thumbnail. Like your chest already knew before your brain caught up and started asking questions. Check your shoulders right now. I mean it. Actually check them. Are they up? Are they tight? Are they sitting somewhere around your ears right now without you even realizing it? Because I already know the answer, and I think somewhere in you, you do too. You've been holding something for a long time, and your body has been keeping score even when your mind was too busy to notice. So let's go. Because this one is not going to wait. Okay, yeah, the very first thing coming through, and it's already hitting different. I'm getting weight. Not a metaphor, not a spiritual concept. Actual, physical, in your body weight. The kind that lives in your shoulders at the end of a long day, and you don't even register it anymore. Because it's been there so long, it just feels like your shape. Like you. Like that's just what you feel like. But it's not your shape. It doesn't belong to you. It never did. And the fact that you've stopped noticing it, that's the part that breaks my heart a little bit, honestly. Because the cards are telling me you have been carrying things for people. Specifically, deliberately. Not in a vague, you're an empath kind of way that sounds nice, but doesn't say anything. I mean, you have been the person in your specific relationships, your specific situations, your specific circles, who takes on what no one else will hold. The emotional overflow, the crisis that arrives at the wrong time, the 2 a.m. call, the conversation that needed to happen and no one else was brave enough or willing enough to start. You became the one who could take it. And that is real. Your capacity is real. Your strength is real. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that's a wound, because it's not entirely. That capacity is part of who you are, and it is genuinely powerful. But here's the uncomfortable part, the part I need you to actually sit with before we go any further into this reading. You became so good at taking it that people stopped asking if you wanted to. They just handed it over. And you opened your arms every single time without being asked. Sometimes before they even knew they needed to hand it to you. And you told yourself that was love. That was just what love looked like, showing up, absorbing, holding, managing. But what if it was just what you learned love looked like? What if somewhere along the way, the wires got crossed and you started believing, really deeply believing, that being needed was the same thing as being chosen? That being someone's emotional anchor was the same thing as being someone's person? Because those are not the same thing. And that distinction, that gap between being needed and being chosen, that is what this entire reading is about. Okay, wait, the energy is shifting, and I'm getting something else now. Something that's been sitting underneath all of that, pressing up, waiting to be named. There is someone, and this might be recent, might be current right now, might be someone you're still in contact with and still trying to figure out what to do about, and this person has this very specific thing they do. And it is hard to explain to people who haven't lived it from the inside, because from the outside, it just looks like they have a lot going on. They're complicated. They've been through things. There's this depth to them, this weight to them, this darkness that's been dressed up as depth. And the first time you felt it, the first time you got close enough to feel the pull of it, you leaned in. Of course you did. Of course. Because you are the person who doesn't run from complicated. You move toward it. You always have. You probably thought that was a strength, and honestly, it is. It genuinely is. But it's also exactly what this particular person needed. Someone who wouldn't flinch. Someone who would stay. Someone who would keep showing up, even when it cost them something. They didn't trick you. I want to be really clear about that, because I know how the story can start to look once you see the pattern. It can feel like you were fooled, like you were naive, like you should have known. And I'm telling you right now, that is not what happened. This wasn't a calculated scheme, but something in them. Some survival level intelligence that people like this develop very early in life recognized what you were offering, recognized that your light was warm and available and enormous. And they just moved in, set up a whole life inside your warmth without ever asking if you had space for them, without ever checking if there was a cost to you. And you made space. Because that's what you do. You rearranged yourself. You quietly moved things around. You made room because that felt like the loving thing to do, and you are someone who leads with love. And you called it love. And the love was real. I am not taking that away from you. The love was absolutely real. But here's the thing that nobody says out loud in these situations, because it's uncomfortable and it requires looking at yourself honestly. You didn't stay because you were weak. You stayed because staying felt like love to you. Because you genuinely believed in your bones, at a cellular level believed that if you just showed up one more time, gave just a little more, held on just a little longer, they would finally become the version of themselves that you could already see hiding underneath all of the darkness and the chaos and the mess. You fell in love with their potential. And they knew that. Maybe not consciously, probably not with full awareness, but something in them understood that your belief in them, your absolute stubborn refusal to give up on who they could be, was the single thing keeping you there. So they stayed just broken enough to keep you holding on. Read that again slowly. They stayed just broken enough. That is not an accident. That is not something you caused, but it is something you funded. Every time you stayed, every time you came back, every time you absorbed the chaos and reset and showed up again, you funded it. Okay. And now, Spirit is pulling me towards something really specific. And I need to get this right, so stay with me here. Because this part matters. I'm getting something very specific about the way you see people, about the way you move through the world, the way you read a room before you've said a single word, the way you know something is off in a situation before anyone has named it, before anyone has even acknowledged it to themselves. You walk into spaces and you feel the undercurrents, the unspoken tension, the resentment that's living just under the surface of someone's smile, the thing underneath the thing that's being said out loud. You have always been like this, probably your whole life. And most of the time, you just absorb it. Quietly, you notice everything and you say nothing and you file it away and you adjust your behavior accordingly and you navigate the situation and nobody in the room even knows what you just did. But this person knew you saw it. And that was a problem, a real problem, because this person has been living inside a very carefully constructed story about themselves. A story where they are the wounded one, the complex one, the one who cannot be fully understood by ordinary people. And that story only works, it only holds together if nobody looks too closely. If nobody actually sees through the construction to what's underneath it. You looked too closely. Not on purpose. Not as an act of aggression, you just showed up as yourself. But yourself, the perceptive, feeling, deeply intuitive version of you, is genuinely a lot for someone who has been hiding. You were probably the most threatening person in their life, not because you were aggressive or confrontational, but because you were real. And real is terrifying for someone whose entire identity is built on performance. So they did that thing. You know exactly the thing I'm talking about. Hot, then cold. Completely present with you one day, totally unreachable the next. Deep, honest conversation on Tuesday, and by Thursday, acting like you're almost a stranger. Making you feel like you had done something wrong without ever actually telling you what. Making you constantly audit yourself, your tone, your words, your timing, the way you asked for something, the way you expressed a need. Was it too much? Was it not enough? Did I come on too strong? Did I pull back at the wrong moment? Meanwhile, they just waited, comfortable in the uncertainty they had created, waiting for you to shrink enough to feel manageable to them. And sometimes you did. Sometimes you shrank. And that is the part you have to look at now. Not with shame, with honesty. Clean, clear honesty. Because every single time you made yourself smaller to make them more comfortable, every time you edited yourself down to fit into the space they were willing to give you, you handed them proof that the strategy was working, that it was worth continuing. Yeah, okay, the cards are going somewhere really specific now, and I need to name this because it's the part nobody wants to say out loud. There are things this person never said to you. And I'm not just talking about I love you or I'm sorry or any of the obvious things, though probably those too. I mean, there are very specific things they understood about you, specific things they could see in you clearly that they never gave you credit for. Out loud, to your face. Because naming it meant accounting for it. And accounting for it meant they had to look at the actual math of what was happening between you, at how much they took and how consistently little they returned, at how often you arrived full of energy, full of care, full of patience, and left empty, at how the equation between you never balanced and they never once tried to balance it, never once asked themselves if that was fair. So they kept quiet about what they saw in you, about what they understood you were worth, about what they knew, somewhere underneath all of it, they were actually doing to you. And I need you to think about something specific right now. Think about the last time you were around this person and you felt that drain. Not tiredness depletion. There's a difference. Tiredness comes from doing too much. Depletion comes from being taken from. You know that specific feeling you drive home, or you hang up the phone, or you close the door behind them, and you just sit there for a second. Not sad exactly, just less, just smaller. Like something was taken, and you can't quite identify when it happened or how. You knew in those moments. You knew every single time. Your body was sending you a signal every single time you left that interaction. The tightness, the flatness, the low-grade feeling of having been used and not quite knowing how to name it or prove it. And you overrode it. You talked yourself out of it. You extended the benefit of the doubt one more time, because the alternative, actually admitting that the person you had invested so much of yourself in was actively pulling you under, was just too expensive a truth to look at directly. So you went back. And they were waiting. Because you always came back. And here's the thing you have to be honest about right now. Not to punish yourself. Not to make yourself feel guilty. But because you genuinely cannot change the pattern until you can see it without flinching. And seeing it clearly means acknowledging this. You knew. You felt it. And you chose to stay anyway. That is not stupidity. That is not weakness. That is someone who had been taught, somewhere deep in their history, that love is supposed to cost this much. That showing up for someone, even when it depletes you, is what love looks like. That your value is directly connected to how much you can endure. It isn't. It was never supposed to cost this much. If you are watching this right now, and something in that just landed somewhere specific and uncomfortable, leave a 333 in the comments. Right now. That's how I know this is reaching who it was supposed to reach. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that right now, because what I'm about to get into is the part that most readings never touch, and you need to hear every word of it. Okay, the energy in the cards is shifting now, and I want to describe what I'm feeling here, because this part is important and I don't want you to miss it. Something shifted recently, or it is shifting right now, this week, maybe even today. Maybe even in this moment as you're sitting here watching this. And I want to describe what that shift actually feels like, because it does not always look the way you'd expect a shift to look. It's not necessarily a dramatic moment. It might not be a confrontation or a final conversation or a door slamming. It might just be a moment of quiet, a completely ordinary moment where you looked at your situation and something inside you just stopped trying. Not gave up. There is a difference. Giving up feels like defeat, like collapse. This feels like something else entirely. This feels like clarity. Like the fog that's been sitting over everything finally started to lift. Like the part of you that had been working overtime, that had been extending the benefit of the doubt past all reasonable limits, that had been finding the charitable interpretation of their behavior again and again and again, that part just went quiet, stopped. And in that quiet, you heard something you had been drowning out for a very long time. Your own voice. Just saying, this is not what I deserve. Not in anger, not dramatically, just the way you'd state a fact. The way you'd say the sky is blue or water is wet. Just true. Undeniable, not something you need to build a case for or argue yourself into. Just the simple, clean truth that you have known somewhere inside you for longer than you have been willing to admit out loud. This is not what I deserve. And I have known it. That moment, whenever it happened for you, wherever you are in it right now, is probably the most important thing that has happened in your life in a very long time. Even if it doesn't feel that way. Even if it just feels like exhaustion or sadness or the end of something. Because it is not the end. I know it can feel exactly like the end, like something is dying, and maybe something is. But what is dying is not you. It is the version of you that believed she had to earn her own peace, that believed rest was something she had to deserve. That version is completing. She is not disappearing, she is graduating. And what comes after graduation is not a trophy handed to you. It's just space, actual space. For the first time in longer than you can probably remember. And now the cards are pulling me back all the way back before this person, before this dynamic, before this pattern had this particular face on it. And I want you to really think about this. Not quickly, not just reading past it. Actually think. Who were you before you started organizing your life around someone else's emotional state? Before you started waking up and immediately doing a mental check of how this person was doing, what mood they might be in, what you might need to manage today. Do you remember what a regular day felt like? When you weren't monitoring someone's tone, reading between the lines of a text message, trying to figure out which version of them was going to show up? When your phone lighting up didn't make you brace just slightly for what might be on the other side? Some of you are going to have to go way back to find that. Because Spirit is showing me that for some of you, this is not just about one person. This is a pattern, a long pattern. A series of people who arrived in your life, each carrying a wound that fit almost perfectly into your particular need to help, to fix, to love someone into wholeness. And you gave your time, your creativity, your clarity, your good years, your late nights, the emotional labor that never once got acknowledged or even named. You poured it out, and somewhere in all that pouring, you lost the thread back to yourself. And the genuinely tragic part of this, and I mean genuinely, heartbreakingly tragic, is that you were so skilled at managing their experience that they never even had to ask you for it. You anticipated. You adjusted. You felt the temperature in the room shift 2 degrees, and you responded before they even registered that something had changed. You were extraordinary at it. Masterful, and masterful meant seamless, and seamless meant invisible. Your effort was invisible because you were too good at it, so they never saw what it cost. And because they never saw the cost, they just assumed there wasn't one. Assumed you were fine. Assumed you could keep going. But there was a cost. There has always been a cost. And you have been paying it in small pieces of yourself for longer than you want to count. Here is the thing I need you to really hear, though, past the wound. Underneath it, you have this capacity for joy. This enormous, barely touched, locked behind everything capacity for joy that has been sitting there behind all of the obligation and the caretaking and the bracing and the managing. It didn't go anywhere. It didn't leave you. It has just been waiting, patiently, stubbornly, for you to finally clear enough space to let it breathe. And all of this upheaval, all of this painful and disorienting recalibration, this is what it looks like when that part of you finally refuses to wait anymore. Okay, and something else is coming through now, something that has been running alongside everything else the whole time. While you were so focused on holding that situation together, while all of your attention and energy was going toward managing that dynamic there, were things trying to reach you that you didn't let in. And I'm not only talking about people or potential relationships, I mean opportunities. Whole versions of your life that knocked on the door and you either didn't hear them or you heard them and told them to come back later. You put yourself on hold. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone around you could see or measure, but internally in the private space where the things you actually want live, you have been telling yourself to wait. Later, when this situation is resolved, when this person is okay, when things are more settled, when it's a better time, and it is always, somehow, a better time for everyone else first. Right now, Spirit is pointing me towards something specific for you. Something an opportunity, a connection, a direction. A version of your life that has been trying to get your attention quietly, not loudly, not in a way that forced itself on you. Just sitting there at the edge of your awareness, patient, waiting, and I think part of you knows exactly what I'm pointing at right now. The rescue mission was never yours to complete. That is the truth that is going to be uncomfortable to really let in. You cannot love someone into healing. You cannot stay long enough, give enough, understand deeply enough to do for another person what they are not willing to do for themselves. That is not how it works. That has never been how it works. You can only ever be responsible for the door that is in front of you. It's time to open yours. Okay, wait. Yeah, this next part, I love what's coming through here. Because this is the turn. This is where it shifts. What I'm getting now is about what happens the moment you actually do it. The moment you stop waiting and start moving, not chasing anyone, not running from anything, just moving toward yourself, toward the life that's been sitting on hold. People around you are going to react to this. And I want you to be ready, because it will catch you off guard even when it probably shouldn't. When you stop being endlessly available when the open door starts to close a little, when you stop absorbing everything without complaint, the people who have been benefiting from that access are going to feel the change. And some of them are not going to be graceful about it. They might go cold. They might get loud. They might tell you that you've changed, that you're being selfish, that you're not the person they thought you were. Let them say it. Because yes, you've changed. That is exactly and precisely what is happening. And the fact that your self-respect is being treated as a problem, the fact that your boundaries are being named as a betrayal, that is the most telling information you could possibly receive about what that relationship actually was. Here is what I need you to hold on to when the guilt comes up, and it will come up. It always does for you. It is practically automatic at this point. Their discomfort is not your emergency. Read that as many times as you need to until it settles somewhere. You are allowed to become someone who requires more. You are allowed to stop performing an accessibility that has been draining you completely. You are allowed to close the doors that have been letting the cold in. The people who are genuinely for you, who value actual you, not the function you've been serving, not the emotional labor you've been providing for free, those people will not leave when you do this. They will adapt. They will rise to meet the new version of you. Some of them might even feel relieved because they will finally get to be around the version of you that isn't exhausted and depleted and running on nothing. The ones who leave when you start choosing yourself, let them go. They were never there for you. They were there for the access. And now that you've closed the buffet, they'll find somewhere else to eat. Okay, stay with me right here, because this is the part that the whole reading has been building toward, and I need you to actually receive it. Something is genuinely, structurally changing in your life. Not eventually, not someday. Now, at a foundation level, things are moving. And it is happening because of you. Because of this process you are already in, whether you chose it consciously or it chose you. This thing that might look from the outside like you are falling apart is actually, and I mean this with everything I have, the most deliberate, purposeful thing your soul has done in years. You are making room. Literally, the overgiving is slowing down. The constant accommodation is cracking. The pattern of reshaping yourself to fit whatever the situation needed that is ending. And when that ends, there is real space where it used to be. Energetic space, emotional space, space for something different to move in. And into that space, not overnight, not gift wrapped, not without more work, something begins to shift. Connection that doesn't cost you yourself. I want you to sit with that because I know it might sound so unfamiliar that it almost sounds made up. Relationships, romantic, friendship, family, it doesn't matter what kind, where the energy actually moves both ways. Where you are held the same way you hold people. Where someone notices you're carrying something heavy without you having to perform okay until you break. Where you are not managing the person who is supposed to love you. That is not a fantasy. That is a frequency. And you are moving toward it right now. It looks like a random Tuesday that feels lighter than usual for no specific reason. It looks like a conversation where you're not tracking the other person's mood in real time. It looks like wanting something and asking for it without rehearsing the ask for 3 days. It looks quiet. It looks ordinary. But it is your actual life, finally, actually returned to you. And the last thing coming through, the thing that's been sitting at the back of this entire reading, waiting to be named, I need to address the part that still lives in your chest. The part that doesn't feel like growth or transformation or moving forward into something better. The part that just grieves. Because some of you genuinely cared about this person. Not the dynamic, not what they represented, not the fantasy of who they could become. The actual person. You saw something real in them. Something worth caring about. And leaving something you genuinely cared for, even when it was hurting you, doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like failing. Like your love wasn't enough. Like you gave everything and it still wasn't enough to make it work. Your love was enough. It was more than enough. It was so much more than enough that it was actually too much for what they had the capacity to receive. The problem was never the size of what you gave. The problem was the size of what they could hold. You do not have to rewrite the love as foolishness in order to move forward. You do not have to decide they were a villain, or that you were naive, or that none of it was real. You are allowed to hold both truths at the same time. It was real, and it is over. The love was genuine, and the dynamic was broken. Both of those things are true simultaneously, and they do not contradict each other. What the cards are showing me right now, and I want to say this carefully, there are things this person would say to you if they could reach the deepest, most honest part of themselves. Not things they will say. I am not telling you to wait for that. But there is a version of this person, the version underneath all the performance and the walls and the carefully maintained story about who they are. That version knows. It knows what it took from you. It knows the weight of what it cost you to love it the way you did. It carries that. I'm not saying that so you go back. I am saying it so you can finally set down the question that has been living in the back of your mind. Whether any of it was real. Whether you mattered. Whether you were actually seen or just used. You were seen. They just could not become what they saw in you. And that is their story. Their chapter. Their work to do in whatever comes next for them. Your chapter with them is finished. Complete. And you are standing right now at the very first line of something that has never been written before. Take a breath. Actually take one. Feel it in your chest, the slight release. The small loosening that happens when someone finally puts words to the thing you have been carrying without a name. You are not too much. You were with people who didn't have enough room for what you were bringing. You were the fire and they let the wind take you. And for a while, you almost believed the wind was right about you. But you are still burning. Quieter, maybe. Smaller, maybe. But still burning. still here. And the people who are coming, the ones at the edges of your life right now that you haven't fully let in yet, they are not going to try to manage your flame or contain it or ask you to turn it down. They are going to add oxygen. That is the reading. That is everything that came through today. And I meant every word of this title. This is genuinely the most insane one I have done. Not because it's loud or dramatic, because it is so specific and so honest and so uncomfortably true that it barely feels like a reading. It feels like a letter, one that got lost somewhere and finally found its way to you. If it landed, and you know in your chest right now, if it did leave 333 in the comments, that is how I know this reached who it was supposed to reach. This was for you. You already know who you are.